everybody. I'm Meddling. I'm an adult, child, and codependent, and I will be one of your hosts tonight.
And everybody, my name is Pat. I am also an adult child and a codependent. I'm a member of ACA as well as CODA and Al-Anon. And I will be your other host tonight. Again, Emily will be our technical support tonight, recording this session and working it to get it up on YouTube.
We want to welcome you to the Anatomy of the 12-Step Study Group. The purpose of this group is to examine each of the 12 steps in a very basic way. This Zoom meeting is not affiliated with nor endorsed by any specific 12-step program. The 12-Step Study Group is not intended as a replacement for having a sponsor or attending other meetings. We know that the 12-step programs may have different, hold on just a minute, I am getting this stuff that's not supposed to come through. The 12-step, we know the 12-step programs may have different focus as reflected in their particular version of the 12 steps. However, we believe that regardless of which addiction or problem brought you into the various rooms of recovery, the solution is the same, of course, the 12 steps. Many of us believe that these steps are the core of our program. We don't believe we're finished working them when we take them once, or maybe every now and then. We believe they are a tool for everyday living. When I am disturbed, upset, or find some person or situation unacceptable to me, these steps are one of my first tools. I find that so many times they are the solution of my pain. And I start with step 1. I am powerless. And there's something out there that can bring serenity into my life. And I go through the steps. It really works. And as you probably know, there are many ways to do steps 4 and 5. The chart we introduced to you last week evolved from Alcoholics Anonymous. Many of us believe this chart gets to the core issues in a more powerful and systematic way. And because this approach is doing a moral inventory, and it might be different from those you've done before, we plan to save some time for Q&A during the session tonight, as well as staying on after the closing to answer any further questions you may have about the way what we're talking about with how to do a 4th and 5th step. Tonight, however, we'll finish up with step 4 by taking a closer look at examples of what selfish, inconsiderate, frightened, or deluded thinking looks like.
Let's get Carol muted.
Okay, y'all get it muted? Okay.
Yeah, we got her muted.
Okay. All right, let me see if I can get back here to where I was. Yeah, tonight we're going to look at some examples of being selfish, inconsiderate, frightened, and deluded thinking. Then we'll answer any questions about this approach to step 4. After that, we'll focus on step 5. And we'll first have someone share about her experience doing this step, and then we'll open it up to the group to listen to others who have finished and done this 5th step. Now, before we get started, a few reminders. Number 1, any 12-step material is accepted in this study group. However, we do ask that you not share non-12-step information in this meeting. And number 2, please mute your mic until you're ready to speak. So let's get started. Pat?
All right. You've probably got this sheet, I hope, in front of you. I absolutely love this sheet. It helped me understand because I can remember the first time I did a 4th step, I kept thinking, I'm not being selfish. I'm not being self-centered. I'm just giving and giving and giving to all these people. And I'm just, I'm nailing myself to a cross, for folks. But what I learned was exactly what's on this sheet. And I love this. anytime I'm looking at some irritation, some situation in my life, I have to go back and remember what's going on inside me. And what's going on is I want what I want. I want it right now. And I become angry, irritated, frustrated, whatever, when I don't get it. And I love that sentence. I want people to behave and act in a manner that I think they should. And I love the next one. I become angry when they don't. This is how that selfishness and dishonesty bubbles up in my behaviors. I feel like if I can throw enough anger at it or enough irritation, maybe it will get better. Maybe the past will get better. Maybe he or she will behave the way I want them to, you know. And I finally heard the word I in those sentences. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, Pat, I am selfish. They have a right to be a snake. They have a right to be whatever they want. That doesn't mean that I have to play with snakes. Meddling?
Yeah, I want to say one thing about selfish, and then I want to throw in some other stuff too. But when it first came up, and I think Pat said this too, is, I did not think I was selfish. I thought I was very selfless and very considerate. And it was of my husband at the time. And that's what drove me into these rooms. I thought, well, that's not me at all. And by the way, the first time I did this fourth step, I didn't do it right. I had to do it a second time until I finally caught on. And I want to share a little bit about the second one, the inconsiderate part. To me, I think of selfish as being one side of a coin and inconsiderate being the other side. It's like I am selfish, as Pat was saying, if I want the rest of the world or he or she or it to do things my way. But I'm also being inconsiderate if I don't see where they're coming from. How can we expect other people to behave differently than what they know and want to behave as? Sorry about that sentence. But, they are who they are. And it's none of my business to try to change somebody else. The only thing I have control over, or mostly control over, is myself. I have none over other people. Couple of examples, well, maybe three. My mom. I was really angry at my mom, resentful at her because she wasn't the kind of mom that I needed her to be. She wasn't emotionally present. She wasn't supportive. She tried to make me into who she wanted me to be, and I didn't want that. And to be more specific, she tried to make me wear hats. I don't know if you females know that time period where you had to wear a hat. I hated hats. They hurt my head. I didn't want to wear a hat, but she made me wear hats. But I was inconsiderate because she had no clue how to be a mom. She had no clue how to be loving and supportive of me and for whatever I might like to do. She had no clue. My dad is the same way. My dad did not come to my rescue at all. He was the alcoholic in my family. And I found out, by the way, doing genealogical work, that his mother drank herself to death. And they found her probably 6 days after she died. And the death certificate is 10 days after I was born. And I can't imagine what my dad must have felt like when he was a first-time father and all that happening to him. Plus, his dad was a fur trapper in Canada, so he was gone all the time. I mean, how would he know how to be a father? And he and my mom both came through a time period in our culture where women took care of the children and men earned the living, and they were not responsible for the children or the home at all, except for mowing the grass outside. And that was about it. So he wasn't taught how to be a dad. The third example, too, is my husband, former husband. And I used to be so irritated at him because he was not the kind of father that I wanted him to be to our son. He wasn't the kind of husband I wanted him to be. And he wasn't the financial provider that I wanted him to be. He liked to spend money, not earn money. And I was just real irritated with him until I did this step and I realized he had no clue how to be a dad or how to be a husband. His own mom was put into a mental institution, mental hospital, at least twice that I know of. And his dad also grew up in that time period where he wasn't responsible for children. So he had a business and he lived at the business until about 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. He'd come home, sleep, get up at 5 or 6, go back to the business. He was never there. How could my husband have learned how to be a dad or learned how to be a husband or a loving husband? And he didn't know. So I am being inconsiderate if I don't see where he's coming from and the fact that he had no clue how to be the kind of person I wanted him to be. So, yes, I was selfish and I was very inconsiderate because I did not consider the fact that they had no clue. Pat? I'm not getting, where's Pat? Did she get kicked off?
Don, sorry about that. My husband came downstairs to do the laundry. Put me on mute.
Oh,
I wanted
okay.
to add to that because not only am I inconsiderate to the other person, expecting them to be different than what they are, I'm also being inconsiderate to myself. As long as I am carrying a resentment or carrying a fear, it's like I visualize in my chest, I can't carry resentment and serenity or peace of mind or feeling empowered or whatever. I can't have all that in my chest at the same time period. So my irritation, my anger, my frustration, all that stuff is also selfish or inconsiderate to me to carry it. The next one we're going to talk about is frightened. Boy, to me, this one is kind of a little bit behind everything. As y'all saw in the sheet, I'm afraid I won't get what I want. I want you to like me. I want you to think highly of me. I want everybody to respect me. You know, that just describes me beautifully. I love the one in there that talks about being afraid to be truthful. In the household that my sister and I grew up in, you couldn't be truthful because what happened was, um, gosh, I can remember mother saying things like, this is silk and it's polyester. We couldn't believe what she said, but I was ashamed because I didn't know how to be truthful and to communicate from a place of honesty without judgment, a place of honesty without anger, and a place of honesty without trying to control the other person. And that I never learned. You guys in this program slowly taught me that. But I had to see that I was just afraid. And really, everything, all of my character defects, or I like to call them character issues, all of those are stemmed from fear. And fear, fear is kind of like the ivy on the side of our house. It just keeps growing if I don't pay attention to it, if I don't look at what's behind the fear. And to me, what's behind it is these deluded thoughts. Everybody's got to like me. I've got to be perfect. All that stuff. So my fear just makes my fear grow. I've often heard it said, what we focus on, we make real. And that's what I did with the fear. Did you want to share anything on fear, Meddling? Or
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do. When I'm working with people on this step, a lot of people have been abused highly by people in their family, stepdads, uncles, brothers, and so forth. Some of them sexually abused as well. And when they get to the fear, many times we talk about two levels of fear. And one is the fear that that person will harm them again. And it's kind of a daily fear with that person. But there's a second layer of fear that we often talk about, and that is a fear that they'll never change. And that's probably true too. They probably will never change. So, two levels of fear. And I often think of that second level as being the worst, but both of it is fear. The third part, fourth part really of that sheet that we gave you is about being dishonest and deluded. And remember the chart, this of the 4 columns in the 4th column. Sorry about this on that chart. And the last one is deluded or dishonest thinking. And actually, that one is probably always checked because we are dishonest or deluded in our own thinking, that we didn't see how we were selfish or how we were inconsiderate or how we were frightened. And that fear thing really screws our thinking up when that happens. And when we don't see our own wrong, our own fault in the situation, then we're not being honest. We're being, our thinking is quite diluted. So I think most of the time that's always true, just because I didn't see my part in this situation. And the fact that, I'd never know what somebody else is thinking, that's a part of that paragraph, and I really like. I remember I used to teach sociology, and one of the studies I read about was, do we know what other people are thinking? And the result of that particular study was we do not know what they're thinking, and we misread what they're thinking over half the time. And I remember thinking to myself at that time, if I ever think I know what somebody else is thinking, I need to assume that I'm wrong. I don't know. And there's no way I can know unless I ask.
Meddling, I'm sorry,
Yes.
It's Amy. I need to interrupt. You were saying under the fear thing, when you heard people, in the last thing that you were talking about, you said that you're afraid that they will never change. Who is the they? Is the they the perpetrator or you?
The perpetrator, afraid the perpetrator.
Okay.
It's the person that they have put on their sheet, usually perpetrator. Yes. Thank you, Amy. Pat?
Okay. The next section talks about dealing with resentments. We've gone a lot over this, but one of the things that we do sometimes, and my sponsor kept telling me, Pat, sometimes you're creating a space for people to behave the way they're behaving. Y'all have probably heard this in other meetings, that if you don't want to be a doormat, get up off the floor. Or, when I play the victim role, how are people going to treat me? Or they're going to treat me like a victim. So learning to stand up for myself has been a challenge because I wasn't taught again. But thank goodness I can see that now, holding that resentment, and y'all see it. It's like, it's like, what is it we always say? We're taking a poison, hoping that it will hurt someone else. For me to hold on to that resentment does nothing more than hurt me, and it's not going to change the other person. Some of y'all heard my talk when I talk about, being angry at the cat because it won't bark like a dog. In other words, being angry at somebody because they won't treat me loving. They won't communicate with me the way I want. My husband won't squeeze the toothpaste the way I want him to squeeze it. I mean, just stupid things that we get caught up in. It's so silly. I think that's all I've got. They can read that section, unless you've got something else you want to add to that, Meddling.
The last section is some examples of how many of these parts kind of fit together. One is that many times we create chaos and drama, and then we blame them for the chaos and drama that we create. And I think that was true for me a lot, because I was so mad at my ex-husband then, I was so mad at him. And I would create things and I would blame him for things and things that he had said 10, 15, 20 years before. I could make a mess. I make a mountain out of a molehill very easily. Another one that I didn't realize that I did was people pleasing. I had no idea that I was people pleasing in order to create a peaceful situation, and I was not authentic in it, and I would say the things I thought he or she or they would want me to say. I would do the things I thought he or she or they would want me to do in order to please them so that they would like me. Wrong reasons for people pleasing. And I had no idea how manipulative people pleasing was until I got into recovery. I didn't realize too that people pleasing caused me to lose my identity. I knew that I didn't have a good, sound, solid identity when I got into these rooms, but I didn't know why. But people pleasing turned out to be one of them. Another one that turned out for me was being a perfectionist. And I had to be a perfectionist again so that you would like me, you would respect me, you would honor me. I mean, that's manipulation, true and simple. There's another part of this one too, is I think that last sentence in there, that I felt when I first got into recovery, that it was okay for me to arrange, control, and manipulate people and circumstances until I got what I wanted. I remember at one time in the car with my mother driving up the mountains in North Carolina to a meeting, and we were talking about groups of people, and I said, Mom, did you realize that you said something in this group and then you said the opposite in this other group? And she said, of course I did. And I said, but what is the truth? And she said, it doesn't matter. You have to wear kid gloves or a different set of gloves when you're different people in order to get them to like you. So I was taught how not to be honest, right? With my mom. So, some of these pieces of the four-step chart, I think are crucial. And for me to understand it finally, my second time around, helped me become a better person and a more authentic person.
Okay. Yep. What we're going to do next is we want to open the floor a little bit, just for a few minutes, just to see if there are any questions that you might have about this particular handout. This has got a lot of stuff in it. So we want to see if you have any questions just about this one piece. Since we still need to go over step 5, we will only address a few questions at this point. So remember, some of us will stay after the meeting for more lengthy discussions if you've got other questions or other thoughts. So, does anyone have any questions about this handout? And please remember to use your digital hand. That way we all won't talk at once. Any other questions or thoughts? All right, Hilla?
Yeah, hi.
Got a question?
I missed, you said 2 levels of fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
First one was the person would not change. I didn't hear the second level.
Okay. The second person is kind of everyday fear of that person that you put on there or situation, whatever, that they might harm you today. It's kind of daily fear. Like a perpetrator might sexually abuse you today. And that is a level of fear, which is a little bit different, I think, than that level of they may never change.
Okay, thanks.
Good question.
That helps?
Okay.
Okay. Mary, you've got a question? Mary R?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was just wondering about diluted. That's something that when I did the steps years ago, we didn't talk about diluted. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about it.
For me, it's diluted is distorted thinking. The original AA Big Book said dishonesty, and I always felt like I was being honest. What do you mean I'm not being dishonest? But the honesty is in how I think about it. That it's most of the craziness happens in my head, and it's how I look at the situation that's the problem, that drives me nutty, that gets me angry. So the diluted or dishonest thinking is, I think they need to do it my way. I think I know it's right, and it's all those crazy thoughts about feeling like people should want to act the way I think they should act. Thinking that my way is right, the way I squeeze the toothpaste is correct, and the way Don squeezes it is not. That's a dumb example, but it's the same kind of thing. So, Meddling, you got any thoughts about that, or anybody else?
I just could repeat and say that for me, diluted thinking means I didn't see clearly my wrongs in the situation. It was always their thought, their fault, their job to change. And that's not true. I didn't see how I was selfish, how I was inconsiderate, or how I was frightened and how that screwed me up.
All right, Sharon, you're next.
As Meddling said, people have a right to be a snake. And I'm wise enough to know that they have that right. But my frustration is that I don't accept it. It just drives me crazy when I'm right and they're wrong, even though they have that right. And I find myself so judgmental. I've been working on like some of the same issues for 140 years because I'm being right, even when I'm wrong. Thank you.
Yep, and that one, Sharon, that one fits me too, because I felt like I was right. They should do it my way.
Yeah, I think they should have too.
Until I started working really with a good sponsor to help me see how selfish that was. When we have some people in politics, they have a right to do what they want to do. I have a vote. I can believe what I want, but getting upset, who is that hurting? It's not hurting them. It's not making them change. It's just hurting me and my serenity. And the only thing I have control of is responsibility for me and my serenity.
Yeah, I don't have control of it. I should have control of it. I don't have control of it.
Yeah. Well, there's some, my suggestion is get a good sponsor and talk with them. If you haven't got one, put a little note in the chat box and say you'd like one. I know there's some people out there that I've suggested they need to start sponsoring people because they've come along and they're ready. So just reach out. All right, let's see who is next. Amy?
Just want to say that this handout is wonderful. And in that diluted thinking, it says in the middle of it, I act as if others have the key to my happiness. I act as if people have an interest or should have an interest in behaving in the manner I think they should. This just nailed me. The idea that other people or their behavior actually change my self-worth or self-esteem positively or negatively is false. I'm just like, how'd y'all know?
Yep, I agree with you 100%. All right, who's next? Catherine?
I'm Catherine, an adult child and a recovering codependent. Like dishonest is fooling ourselves. Okay, we're not seeing it right. We're totally dishonest. We're lying to ourselves. It's like Ed says, the big lie. And inconsiderate is expecting them to do ... right? And then selfish is my way or the highway. And then I always think of diluted thinking as anything else. Like, if you're non-delusional, you're selfless, honest, and considerate, and you see things in the moment as they occur. Delusional thinking is not seeing what's right in front of you. And so through recovery, we get to those levels of deeper understanding. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. All right, I think Edna's next.
I'm Edna, codependent and adult child recovering. With diluted thinking, my sponsor used this list with me pretty often, and I want to read it direct. I had an issue with wondering what diluted thinking meant as well, and it says, I know what someone else is thinking.
Edna, you got muted.
Edna, we've lost you. Edna, check your mute.
On it. Okay.
There you go.
I act as if I know what other people are thinking. And then the story that I made up, I'm not reading it verbatim, but I act as if the fiction that I just created in my head is true. And that I have control of how other people, this is a couple sentences from that how other people respond to my truth, whatever that is. And those, I mean, that's the stories that we told ourselves about maybe something that somebody's done in the past, and whatever has happened in the past, just like a fellow traveler said earlier, is no longer what's in this present moment. So you're making up a story based on history, but it's not the present moment. So diluted thinking is whenever I'm going back in time, and then, I've heard it said that it's three sides to every story: my side, your side, and the truth. It's getting past that story that we told ourselves all our lives, or that people have told us, and that we believed and carried. So that was, these sentences really do cut to the white meat of, whether you can whether it resonates with you, because some of those have really, I'm not been in recovery that long. I'll say just a blink of an eye, and really seriously working the steps with a sponsor. And I would suggest that anybody do this, because you will talk yourselves out of it. I talk myself, let's say I talk myself out of it, especially selfish. I'm very giving. I do for everybody else. Nobody would ever say that I was selfish. And I was like, yeah, I want what I want when I want it. And I see selfish, that word, defined totally different now as a codependent and adult child. And it was an eye-opener for my sponsor to just ask me again and again the same question: which one of those sentences makes sense? So thanks for letting me share.
Yes, good. All right. CSC, see, and I'm not sure what the full name is. You're up next. There you are.
Hi, I'm Shelly. I'm a codependent. Sorry, I'm in my car, so it's a little dark.
That's okay.
I think this step, while I have yet to work it fully, I'm just still going through the process, obviously, as we all are. When I think about the diluted aspect of it, I think the part that resonates for me the most, that I've kind of had to work through before I even came to Coda, and now I realize how much it goes together. It really relates to me for like racism. It's like when I look at the perceptions around my race, where I live, and all of the things that are projected onto me, and all the work that I've done in my life and in my work professionally to try to convince people not to be racist. That's exhausting and really not my responsibility, and really selfish of what I need for myself to feel secure, to feel whole, to feel safe within the world and within relationships. And that's a really hard pill to swallow, because wow, how do I live in a world and in a country that in many places, like right now I'm in Florida, I'm from New York, and I'm in Florida in an area that's not so culturally diverse and friendly, and it's uncomfortable being here. And I have to create this inner dialogue all the time that I am my focus. I can't preoccupy myself with thoughts that I can't control. I can't preoccupy myself with the fact that my life is in danger for no reason at all. And so it's not directly the same from like, I guess like an interpersonal experience, but that area speaks so loudly to me, because just in order for me to feel a sense of gravity, of wholeness in myself, I've had to look at, where do I participate in racism? And in the way that I do participate in that is by letting anyone think that they have a one-up on me or I deserve harm because of what I look like. And so it's just kind of like taking that power back and that ownness back for me, where it relates to being deluded about abuse and disrespect that I really can't control. So thanks for letting me share.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Y'all can see there's the thing that I love about the 4 steps is that we share openly from our heart. It's almost, I have to put my phone down so I can say this. It's almost like I'm unzipping my shirt and going, woo, you can see my heart. I know that seems silly, but that's what I felt like when I was doing a 4th and 5th step, especially the 5th step, because I thought I was getting ready to show my gut, all my crappy thinking, and my sponsor was, or whoever I shared it with was going to judge me, and I wasn't going to, how could I share it? But so one of the things I hope you'll notice, as we're sharing even tonight, people are sharing from their heart, and they're sharing from a very honest place. I've noticed that there's a lot of people that are coming very late. I hope you will get the link since you're registered and start this video over so that you can hear these wonderful sharings from the beginning. Since there's no more questions at this point, next what I wanted to do is to kind of focus on step 5, which is sharing your inventory with your God, yourself, and another human being. We've asked Joe to share. Joe C. and Joe, you need to get yourself off mute and come join us.
Okay,
Joe's going to share a little bit about her experience of doing a 5th step. And then after she talks, I'm going to open the floor for other people to share also. Joe?
I'm hoping you can hear me. Thumbs up, yes? Okay, because sometimes my mic works and sometimes it doesn't. This group, the anatomy group we had this last year. And I had only been, hi, I'm Joe, I'm an adult child. I had only been in ACA for maybe 2 or 3 months before that. And I joined ACA, I had tried Al-Anon and some other groups, but I had hit a bottom at the end of a relationship and really, really was motivated to do something about it and get better and help myself and help my family and people, and not choose people who weren't good for me. So I needed a sponsor. I knew I had to have a sponsor. I was really motivated to get through the steps. And one of the leaders in this series, who was doing the series last year, struck a chord with me when she talked about the fruits of the Spirit, which are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, which I lack in. I was always angry and resentful, and I knew I wanted to live in serenity. So I asked her to sponsor me. So we started and we used the yellow workbook, and I got up to step 4, and it was almost time for step 5, and I was panicking. And I had a lot of fear, so much so that I started having some stomach issues. And I didn't want to do step 5 because of shame. I was truly ashamed of things I had done. I had low self-esteem. All my affirmations came from outside sources, and I cared what others thought about me. I cared what she thought about me. And I hid behind being a successful career woman and a powerhouse. And I was, always had that illusion up of being perfect. So when I was faced with actually telling somebody else that I wasn't perfect and all the awful things I had done, I knew I was really afraid to do it. And I knew she wouldn't like me anymore and would never want to speak to me again. I really felt that way. I really felt that she would be like, you're gross and you're a terrible person and goodbye. And so before we could get there, my father passed away. So I went into grief counseling. I put the steps on hold. And then when I was ready, I asked my sponsor if we could just start all over again from step 1. And this time I actually kept my grief counselor because she specialized in PTSD. And I actually made it through step 5 and came out on the other side. And my sponsor still talked to me and she didn't judge me at all. And it was great. We went through all the 12 steps and I felt great and life was running very smoothly. And I was doing well working my program. But then in this last September, my son was killed in a car accident. He was 19 years old, and I had a lot of support especially from this group. And I was able to hold it together for a couple of months, but then I spiraled out of control, lost my program. I hit another bottom over the holidays. And then I asked a sponsor who had a counseling background to help me work through the 12 steps again. But this particular sponsor said one of her requirements was that we had to do step 5 in person. And I'm hoping she'll share that reasoning with everybody, because although it was much more intimidating in person, it was very impactful to do it in person. So the first time I did the 5th step, my biggest revelation was in the payoffs. And I had never, ever thought of myself as a victim because I was this strong woman who was successful. And as I went down all the columns in the 4-step chart, I was checking victim, payoff, victim, victim, victim. So I had actually deluded myself into believing my deluded thinking. So that my patterns was, okay, now I know I'm a victim and my payoff is a victim. I actually enjoyed being a victim. So I knew I had to change that, and seeing that pattern really helped me get control of victimhood and not being a victim. But then the second time I worked through the 5th step, I realized even more patterns to my deluded thinking, because I lived my entire life in fight or flight mode. I was abused and by my alcoholic parents. So I felt like I had to control everything in my life and everyone in my life. And I knew what was best for everyone. So the pattern that I saw the second time through showed me that I was my own worst enemy. And I was a perfectionist and I punished myself constantly. And the first time through the steps, I actually had not let go. I still was holding on tight to fear and resentment toward myself. I never forgave myself. And I really did the first time through a half-hearted amends to myself. So I was still living in my past. And then the trauma of losing my child just dredged everything back up, all my regrets and what ifs and all the lies I've been taught about myself, that I was unlovable and a bad person. Everything came back up. And I realized also that I didn't have any foundation in love, and I don't have any skills in knowing how to love myself. I didn't have any self-worth or value. And I felt as a perfectionist in the last year that that phrase, I did the best with what I had, was not acceptable. And I had to learn, I had to accept that. When I was sitting in person with my sponsor, I had to let the past go, or I was never, ever going to achieve serenity. So the only way I saw these patterns, because I didn't see them when I did the chart. I saw them when they were pointed out to me by sitting with my sponsor, and somebody from the outside who's non-judgmental looking in can see patterns that I couldn't see. And now that I'm aware of them and my character defects, I can proactively go about finding tools to work with them, including with my sponsor and fellow travelers and all the readings, because I can't fix things that I'm not aware of. So without seeing my pattern of self-criticism, and by working through step 5, I wouldn't be able to do anything about it. So reading the chart out loud, finally, both times through, I felt a lot lighter. And then the second time through, when I really came clean, I felt like I had a clean slate and I could start over, that I was new, and I was now really in the moment and had let go. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. That was wonderful. I wanted Joe to share because she's so articulate in sharing, that fear that we have of doing a 5th step, and then the power of what happens when you do a 5th step with someone. It reminds me a little bit of like one of our, Emily, who's doing the taping. She has all these little bunnies that are her pets. And it's almost like my sponsor picked up the little bunnies, the bad parts of me, and said, well, let's look at the ear, and, we're going to love on this. And, there wasn't judgmentalness, and I'm like, Joe talked about why I like to do a 4th step or 5th step face-to-face. For me, it is better because I can see the expressions of the person that I'm with. And hopefully they can see my expressions and my talking from my heart, so that we both feel better about opening our hearts up. Anything, Meddling, you want to say about that before I do our next section?
Just 2 things. One is when I did my 5th step the first time, what I felt is what I think Joe was kind of referring to. I felt refreshed. It was like a huge load off of me. And my sponsor did not reject me when I did the 5th step. I felt human, and that it was okay to be human after doing it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it was a real different feeling for me. As a sponsor and trying to do 5th steps today with COVID, that I just want to respond to just a little bit. I prefer doing a 5th step in person. And before this pandemic, I also required a person to do it with me at my house, in person. COVID has just changed how I do a 5th step. I still prefer it in person. But when somebody lives on the other side of the continent, I cannot require them to fly down to my house. Plus, I'm selling my house and moving into a teeny tiny apartment right now. So it's just not going to work right at this moment. So what I have done is we have done a 5th step online through Zoom, and it has taken weeks to do it. We try to stay on Zoom at least 2 hours, when normally when I'm working with somebody, a fifth step takes about 7 hours, from 4 to 8 hours each person, to get everything they have put on their chart out and processed by the recovery way. So doing it through Zoom has been really different, but I am being told that it does work. So Lordy me, I hope it does. Thank you. That's what I wanted to say.
All right, great. So we've got a few minutes left. I think we told everybody that our meeting would be an hour to an hour and a half. It's a little bit before 9 now. So what I'd like to do is, since we've got a few minutes left, let's see if there's anybody else who would like to share their experience of doing a 5th step. So I'm going to open up to the floor. Remember, what I'd like for you to do is use your digital hand. If you're calling in on a landline, kind of like I have to because of terrible internet, just remember, send an email to Ava at anatomy12step2022@gmail.com, and she'll help you get into the discussion. So we've got some hands up. Abby, you want to share?
Yes and no. So I did my 5th step with my sponsor using the chart, and it was an amazing experience. And fortunately, it came in very handy this weekend. Without going into a ton of detail, my 32-year-old daughter and her 32-year-old boyfriend have been living in our basement since December while they look for a home. They sold a condo in 3 days and have been having a heck of a time trying to find a home of their own. And I had been knocking myself out to be accommodative and stay in my program and yada, yada, yada. And finally, things started to really wear thin last week. I had one of my sponsees over on Friday, who I just absolutely adore, and we were talking about some things going on with her, and it just brought up so many things for me that I had been suppressing. So I had decided, and at one point, these two had been throwing out things like, initially they were saying, maybe we'll rent some Airbnbs around, different places, or we'll rent an apartment for, several months until the market cools down. So thinking that was a real possibility, I decided on Friday night that I was really on the verge of losing my serenity, and that a good solution would be to calmly say in a text, I think that maybe it would be a good idea for you guys to look for an apartment and be out of here by April 1st. Again, thinking I am being so generous and that did not go well. My trying to control the situation by keeping my serenity, just because of the dynamics created the chaos and drama that I was trying to avoid. And because that happened, I just slid down the hill and became the victim, and just all of my angers and resentments and just everything was just out of control. It was very tragic. And within 2 hours, I remembered that I have a 4th step chart. I have my diluted thinking sheet, and I took myself down to a beautiful spot that I love by the Chattahoochee River, and I did my 4th step chart. And I could see all of the patterns of, the columns 5 and 6, everything, it was just all the eyes. And then I started reading my Diluted Thinking and just really came to realize that that it was me. You know, as much as I was trying to give grace and acceptance, I was still trying to control the situation. And just decided that I needed to do my 5th step with my daughter. So when they came back on Sunday, we had it was rough at the very beginning, and it just melted away, and I could hear her fears and resentments. You know, it's not fun for her to have to come back to her family home and live in the basement, and you know, again, so on and so forth. But I'm just telling you, it works. You know, it just, when you can really, I mean, I've written down so many things that I haven't said, but as much as you think you're in recovery, it can still be deluded thinking, because until you can really grasp that serenity in a healthy way, you know, boundaries are boundaries, but boundaries can easily become walls, and walls are very hard to tear down. So I hope that made some sense. I'm still a little raw, but I am just so incredibly grateful for these tools. Thank you for letting me share.
Thanks for sharing, Abby. Ellen, I think you're next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ellen. I'm an adult child, and I live in California. When I did my 5th step, I went to my sponsor's house early in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, prepared to stay till 6. I had to also come with a way to release, like doing the 6th and 7th step after a physical release when I was done. So the 5th step, I was terrified of sharing my inner self with anybody, because of my trust issues and fear of rejection and that. And when I shared, you know, I cried, and then I found out we have some similarities. And, you know, I got hugs, I got chocolate, I got homemade soup, and I felt loved and cared for, and it just was amazing. You know, that whole day was amazing. I was supposed to go square dancing that night, and what was told to me was, like, you're going to be exhausted. And when I got home, I was exhausted, you know, after I did the release. And then I went home, and I got up the next morning, and I called, and I said, I just felt so empty-headed. There was nothing. There was no tapes in my mind. There was nothing. I just felt empty-headed and free. So it was an awesome feeling to feel that way after holding on to all this stuff for all those years, being able to talk about it with somebody and share. And, you know, I also used the chart, which was a really good tool. I have like all kinds of copies of the chart. So if I need to use it, if anything comes up in my life that I need to work on, I use the charts. I gave them to my sponsees, you know, and one of my sponsees, we went to the zoo, and we found an area where we could, because this is during COVID. And another time, one of my other sponsees, she came down from LA, and we went to Balboa Park to the Rose Garden. And so nice places outside, and we were able to do this during COVID. So it was good. And, you know, I know one of them, they got back to me many times saying how much, you know, doing that 5th step and, you know, asking more questions about it, and just helping them work through their stuff is amazing. So with that, I just love this program, and I do like these worksheets. Sometimes it's hard to face up to what we need to face up to, you know, especially that inconsiderate and deluded thinking and all that. At first I didn't understand, and it took me a little bit to understand, but I got it eventually. it took time for everything to sink in. But yeah, so thank you for listening.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Ellen. Dan, I think you are next.
Hello, I'm Janice, codependent recovering ACA from Boston. And I just wanted to pop in here because I am a Zoom child or a COVID child or from recovery, from the recovery standpoint. And I wanted to share with everybody that I can't compare to doing it on non-Zoom, but I did do it Zoom, and I had great relief and recovery from doing the step 5. And I went through all the same band of emotions, if you will, fearing of how my sponsor would think about me, et cetera, and I can confirm that it went very well, and I had very same response of lots of relief. So if anyone is feeling apprehensive because of the COVID situation, my suggestion to you is just forge forward. It'll work. So with that, I'll pass. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. That's wonderful. One of the things, and I think she's right, to bring it up, and Meddling brought it up, that with Zoom, we can do a 5th step now. If the person has got internet capabilities. That's one thing I don't have much of living out in the country like we do. But the nice part is it is workable. It doesn't have to be done in one sitting. The important part is to do it so that we can get these good feelings that we've been talking about. All right. Anybody else have any thoughts that they want to share about their 5th step and what it was like for them?
I'd like to ask a question, Pat. I know of a couple of people on the meeting tonight that had to do their 5th step, not with their sponsor, but with somebody else. I wonder if they would share what that was like.
All right, Vanell, looks like you're up next.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I can share. I didn't use this chart when I did a 5th step. Oh gosh, it must have been 10 years ago. And I went to a therapist who was a therapist in recovery. She was a recovering alcoholic. And I did a 5th step through the CODA workbook. And we broke it up into 2 sessions. So it was 2 hours, 2 different weeks. And I got some relief, but it wasn't much. I really didn't see my part like when I did it with this chart. This chart really showed me all the ways that I was wrong and my perspective, talk about diluted thinking, my perspective for me was that my perspective was screwed up. I thought that I was Mrs. Right and that everybody else was wrong. And this chart helped me. Now I want to speak on the doing the 5th step with a sponsee over on Zoom. I've done, since the pandemic, I've done 1 in person at the beginning of the pandemic, and we had a safe meeting place. It wasn't at my house or her house, but it was a place that was safe. And then I've done lots of them over Zoom, and I feel they went well. And I believe that the sponsees, and some of them weren't even my sponsees, they were just people that were said, I've done this work and I want somebody to do a 5th step with. And I listened, and I feel that it went well. I'm just grateful for Zoom because I can have an opportunity to listen to people do a 5th step if they live very far away from me. So thank you guys. I appreciate all I've heard tonight. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Vernell. Hortensia, I think you are next.
Yeah, last week I shared that after I finished my 5th step, a little song that it's inspired in a verse from the Bible, but I couldn't remember which one it was. And I looked it up, and it's Matthew 18:20, which says, "For where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them." And for me, right after I made the 5th step, that's the phrase that came to me, and I really felt the presence of God. It is a spiritual program, and to me, each one of the steps brings me closer to God and to my higher power. So yeah, that it does bring me connection to my sponsor, but also to God.
All right, thank you, Hortensia. All right, Edna, I think you're next.
Yes, I was not able to financially or work related be able to go to my face-to-face 4th and 5th step with my sponsor. My sponsor asked me, was I willing to do whatever I needed to do and put my recovery first? And I said, well, there's no way I can financially do that. It's not that I don't believe that. And they thought of someone that was closer to me in proximity. And that was a beautiful experience. The fellow traveler welcomed me into their home. We had homemade soup, tea. They chopped it up into 2 days. It was like a day where it was just pretty much everything. And then the next day, kind of recapping. But I did my step 6 and 7 with my sponsor on the phone. And we updated her. I don't think that it was a slam dunk for me. Like, it's not a one and done. I'm committed to my recovery for the long haul till I'm up out of here with my higher power, because I know that I need it. And that was, getting past, as a fellow traveler has said, guilt feelings. I did get past a lot of my guilt. I definitely told all my stories, and my person that walked me through step 4 and step 5 was very patient, very loving, non-judgmental, and let me weep when I needed to weep. And I just felt safe and protected and willing to move forward with the process. And the willingness is what made the difference, I believe, in me moving forward. And the safety net of knowing that it's not a straight line to recovery. It's going to be squiggly, and this was a big squiggle that I'm grateful that I was willing to take the advice of my sponsor and continue to move forward on my steps, not when it was going to be convenient to get away from work or from with my finances. Thank you for letting me share.
Great. Thank you so much, Edna. I appreciate you sharing. I think Catherine is next.
Hey, everybody. I'm Catherine, adult child of an alcoholic and recovering codependent. Really, to do a thorough 4th step took a very long time with my sponsor. I mean, there was a lot of work, a lot of writing, a lot of thinking, a lot of sifting through, but really coming to the nature of my wrongs. Like the big lies in my life. The big lies were I couldn't trust people, but in reality, I chose untrustworthy people to be around. And then another big lie was that I wasn't good enough. I was absolutely good enough all my life. I just didn't see it. Another lie was that I didn't have any self-esteem. I did have self-esteem. I just didn't recognize it. Another lie was I was fearful of things. And actually, I've been pretty brave in my life. So it's like that balance. Like when you first come to recovery, it's like all you can see is the negative side. But when you find the balance in your recovery, that, selfishness, actually, I became aware of motives for my behavior. inconsiderate, I was able to forgive others because I no longer expected them to be the way I wanted them to be or needed them to be. It's a huge freedom when you don't need people to be something. Honesty took great courage to work this program, and diluted thinking brought clarity. So when I had clarity, I could start seeing things in real time, where before I might get hurt and it might take me 3 weeks to figure it out and really see it clearly. So that time has shortened through awareness. Yes, to trust a sponsor and tell them all your dirty laundry, that takes great courage. But when you do it, it's like washing laundry, right? I mean, you really clean up your act. You really understand where you're coming from, and you can be honest in your life with others. And guess what happens? You choose other people that are honest. You choose other people that are trustworthy, and life gets better. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing. One of the things y'all will hear over and over is get a sponsor and work through these steps. I have noticed in the chat box, we've got several people who've said, I want a sponsor. I also know that there's some people in this room that need to start sponsoring. So I want to encourage you guys to start sharing names and talking to each other and get a good sponsor. We're not alone. Even when the first time I started sponsoring someone, my sponsor said, it doesn't matter if you don't know what to say. It's okay. Your job is to teach people how to use the steps. Your job is to teach them how to do a 4-step chart. Your job is to be there to listen. And if you don't understand something, you just say, well, let me think about that and I'll call you back tomorrow. And then you call your sponsor. This is a we program. And if y'all haven't seen my talk on sponsorship, gosh, it changed everything. My sponsor helping me walk through this stuff and open up my heart and really look at the trash that was in there that needed to be gone and saving the good stuff. And then my sponsor finally get me to the place where, okay, you need to start sponsoring people. And then my recovery took off like a plane off the runway. It is wonderful. So for those of you who are ready to start sponsoring, I want to encourage you. Are there any other questions before I turn it back over to Meddling to take us out of here? All right. Oh, Catherine? Your hand's back up.
I just wanted to say one thing. If anybody does have time, it doesn't take that much time to sponsor because actually the sponsee does most of the work. You're kind of like a guide to just get them out of the sticky wickets and just proceed with the work. And if anybody wants to be a sponsor, don't be afraid to put your name and number in the box. You have time for one person even. Thank you.
Yeah. And everybody, don't forget, you can save the information that's in the chat box. You can stay afterwards if you don't know how to do that, and some of us will help you learn how to do that. Somebody's already put some information up there about the sponsorship video, so that one's up there, and there's a lot of other good stuff that's coming up. All right. We've got a couple of things to do as we close out. Meddling, you want to take over?
Okie doke. It's about time for us to close out. Remember that some of us will be staying over after the meeting is over with. We'll talk about this or answer any questions you may have. But before we close, let's hear from Jane and Kendall about next week's homework. Jane, Kendall?
Hi, I'm Jane, a codependent, and for next week's homework, steps 6 and 7, Ava will be sending an email with the homework. And in addition to some questions to reflect on, there are 2 handouts. One is an excerpt that will be included in the presentation, and we just thought you might want a copy of it. And then the second that we thought you might like a copy of are step 7 prayers from different fellowships. So that will be going out in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Kendall, any other thoughts there?
No, unless anyone had any questions about our next meeting about step 6 and 7.
Do your homework, right? Okay, and Alva said she'll send it out, so that's kind of good. Okay, as we close, I'd like to share with you two things. One is one of my favorite slogans that I think is perfect for here, and that is, living with resentment is like eating the peel and throwing away the orange. Living with the resentment is like eating the peel and throwing away the orange. And you don't have to do that because you've got the 5th step to do. It works. It really does work. And I'd like to close with my favorite version of the Serenity Prayer, which goes this way. Today, I seek the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to change the one I can, and the wisdom to know that one is me. Good night, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday night.